Can anybody hear me? Okay, good. So let me just start my watch so that I don't speak over time. Okay, so I want to speak to you today about an assessment method that I've been using for the last 7 or 8 years now with some intercalated students. So these are students who take a year out of their medicine degree to do a science degree, and I've been running a module for them for the last sort of, I think, 16 years. I worked out earlier today, which was a bit embarrassing. And this, I was going to call my talk this title because this is really the inspiration. I got bored marking essays. I've been doing the module for about 5 years or 6 years, and I got bored marking the essays. I got bored making the titles. I got bored reading the same things from the students year in, year out. And I think I can see enough smiles in the audience to suspect that I'm not the only person who's had that experience. So I decided to introduce a different in-course assessment, and with the objective to encourage engagement with the internet and engagement with digital technology. And I felt that it was important to provide an opportunity for the students to practice this, and the brief, so the only sort of brief is quite broad, to create a piece viewable by a computer. The first year I did it, I also allowed it to submit sort of visualizations that were on paper, but I decided very quickly that I would make it had to be viewable on a computer. And examples, I gave them examples of what I talked about. It could be a web page, it could be a video automation piece, it could be a news piece, a business proposal, and a variety of other bits and pieces. And the basic brief was to be creative. And I challenged the students and I said, be creative. And I said, I don't really mind what you do as long as you show some learning and as long as you're creative. And the key part of this, the key part of today is I want to show you 3 student pieces that they've made, and to show you a little bit about what they're capable of. I gave the students the option of doing group work or working individually. Most students over the course of all the assessments did individual assessments. About 20% of them work in groups. This number increased more recently in the last few years. This gives you an indication of what they've used. The majority of them, by quite some measure, have made websites. Some of them made Pretsies, videos, a couple of newspaper articles, and one of them made a Wikipedia article and e-learning tutorial. So they were, again, quite diverse, with the majority of them making websites. This is just a still of some of the output. So that's the Prezi up there. This was a YouTube videos, a Wikipedia page, and some websites. And I'm going to show you one of these now, and then I'll show you another 2 as we're going along. Hopefully this opens up here. So these are 2 medical students who have embraced their creative side, right? They've dressed themselves up with names of 2 cytokines. This is a medical sort of, these are medical molecules. They've created a website that talks about asthma industries because these 2 molecules are very involved in asthma. They've put it together with they've put a CEO, a man disappointingly, I think, but there we go. They talk about the epidemiology of asthma. They talk about the different types of diseases, and they have some nice stuff through it. And then they have their senior, they've dressed themselves up and put some face paint on, and I just smiled when I saw this. I particularly smiled when I saw, if I go to the home page, because they somehow made a Harlem Shake video, so hopefully this comes up. Con los terroristas. A whole group of people, right? Illustrating a learning point, right? Which we all quite like. Okay, so back, I have them peppered through my talk, right? So, there we go. I supported the students during the development, so because I wanted them to engage with the internet, I started off by getting them to put some facts and sources on Wikipedia, and the idea here was for them to really understand that entry into delivering information on the internet is relatively low. It's not a major barrier, and so they have to add a fact or a source in Wikipedia, and they do this actually a couple of times. In the first week, they can add any fact or any source about anything they know about. We had somebody who put some information on rugby players. We had some people who put some information about where they lived. went, and again it was just a nice low barrier entry. Then I got them to add some facts about cytokines, about the topic of the module. About 3 weeks in, they had to come up with a one-page plan for their presentation. So this is the reason it says one-page plan for your presentations, because this is directly off the slides I give them in the beginning, and then I read back that. I have written here feedback from the course tutor. That's me. So I read what they say, and I say, well, think about this or think about that, and then they have submission 1 week before the last lecture. They also, as part of it, have to review all their own colleagues' submissions. So there's a feedback session within all that as well. So for me, one of the most important questions in comparison to previous presentations, obviously it was all well and good to say that I was being digitally creative and that I was having a bit more fun than I was marking my essays, but I wanted to be sure that I wasn't either adversely affecting the students or marking them up. And so I compared the marks of the digital creativity assessment versus presentations, which is what I used to do previously, and you can see that the marks are basically the same. There is a little box and whisker plot, there is a little bit of a difference in the mean, but it's not significant, at least as far as I can make out. And I think with the 95% confidence intervals crossing, there's no significant difference in the marks. Student feedback was very important to me, and this is harnessed over about 5 years of student feedback. What I asked the students to do was rate the in-course assessment on a 7-point scale. We don't have a direct comparison like James is, because that's very challenging, is to compare one assessment type with another. But basically I asked them, did you think it was worthwhile, or did you think it was a waste of time? And you can sort of see that it's up here on worthwhile rather than down here on waste of time. So that was quite nice to see. These were 2 comments that I've just picked out of the text responses. I don't know how well you can read that. And this bottom one here is really the key one for me. At the beginning, I thought it was going to be a waste of time, but actually I really enjoyed doing it. Also very worthwhile reviewing other people's submissions. So I think that, again, for me, that was a key point. And there's no doubt that many of them sort of were quite concerned at the beginning on the first day. And so when I went back and talked to them the following week, I said to them, have you given it some thought? I asked them whether they had any concerns. I talked to them through it. I also showed them demos of previous students' work so that they were confident that they could see previous students' work and the kind of work that was produced. It was great to have a different kind of assessment instead of an essay. Over the course of the different modules, they get quite a lot of essays and presentations, and it was really an opportunity for different students to show their work. I gathered all the words, all the feedback, and I created a Wordle, good, time. So it did take a bit more time than perhaps some of the other coursework. It was good, it was very creative, so on. So again, just to show that I can be digitally creative as well. So when you wanted the students to do it, you have to walk a little bit yourself, right? So this is another showcase I want to show you. I'll talk you through it quite briefly. So this is a particularly creative group of people who created a storyline in this, with 3 students came together, created a storyline about 3 vampires and losing their child due to tolerance incompatibility between vampire DNA and human DNA. And it was quite amusing. So they have a prologue, a musical prologue with one of the students playing the piano, and they mock themselves up. Sacrifice. They again produced some nice videos about Isabel, the first ever vampire baby, feeling extremely sick following her exposure to human blood, and they talk about some of the things about tolerance. But again, we have some nice science. I don't expect any of you to take this away, but they have some nice science within it, and the primary learning objective was very well demonstrated, and they actually seem to have had a huge amount of fun making these videos, and you'll be glad to hear that they managed to cure the baby. So obviously this is fiction, not fact. Isabel has been cured, and they're dancing around the graveyard. This is the graveyard just opposite, they're not quite dancing, just opposite the Heath campus, in case any of you are wondering where it is, right? And for me, that's one of the big... How much time have I got? Not too bad, right? So not everyone enjoyed it, and this is for sure, despite the map, despite the sort of general worthwhileness of it from the students' point of view. Some of them found it a bit stressful. One of them said they spent a larger portion of the time formatting than they did actually learning and researching. Again, quite too consuming. Too much weighting on the creative side, so some people have more of knowledge of how to put together a website than make a video. While obviously I listened to all the feedback, I wasn't too fussed about this aspect of it, because even when we ask students to give essays, when we ask students to give presentations, we're again favouring students that have particular skill sets. And so what I liked about doing this task, is we were favouring a different group of students with a different skill set. And so there was some diversity within assessment as well. Like this was only one in-course assessment in one module across the whole range of their degree. And I had discussed it and had interactions with other people delivering other modules on the program, and the majority of them are just still doing essays or presentations. So this, for me, was a nice alternative. So I think, despite the work that was done, I'm not too worried. Despite the sort of not everyone enjoying it, I'm not too worried about it. One of the key points is that I hadn't anticipated is that it does take longer to review a website than it does to read an essay. Having taught in the university for many years, I can usually mark an essay in about 10 minutes. I can't remember what the workload model allows for it, but this took me about 15 minutes per piece extra. The length of the work is, often not very useful criteria. Normally, I can look at an essay and count the pages. I did an experiment once where I counted the length, and there is a definite correlation between length and marks in the work that I do. So that's another question. The upside is that many of the pieces made me laugh, and I can honestly and categorically say I have never laughed reading an essay, unless there were sort of howls of pain. My wife does some marking for the WJEC, and this is AS level English, and has been regularly regaling me with some of the stories of what she reads. And I can say that despite her despair doing the work, she seems to have more fun laughing at the essays than I've ever done with mine. Whereas, as you can see, some of the students have put huge amounts of creativity into the work, and I was really impressed by the students over many years, which I think is nice. It's nice to see the students be creative. It's nice to feel that you've contributed to that process. And so, despite the extra workload, of all the extra workload I have in Cardiff University, this has been the most rewarding by some distance. And so I think this is just the last piece, and it's 1 minute and 9 seconds of a video, which I'm just going to show you here. It's on YouTube, so again, it's all in the public domain, and I'll make it a whole screen. So for me, this is the kind of thing that I want to end on. There we go. So YouTube doing its business, doing its magic. And it just, I go back here. I think I have it on my slides anyway. So just this video, which was made just this year in December by some students, it's just hugely amusing, and it illustrates what the whole core topic of what they're talking about. It absolutely illustrates it. You know, it illustrates what we would love to think oncolytic viruses are doing. You know, the cancer cell is a balloon, and then the apoptosis of the cancer cell, and then picking up the neoantigens. And it just, as I say, it made me smile. And I don't think I've ever had any other pieces of coursework that made me smile as much as doing this. So the sort of conclusions is, in my experience, having done this, as I say, 7 or 8 years, encouraging digital creativity is achievable. I believe it's worthwhile, particularly in the sense of the integrated program. Generally, students find it rewarding. The feedback is generally very positive. And when we did the students enjoyed looking at each other's pieces and demonstrated a very supportive behavior toward each other. And most students felt empowered by the task despite technical uncertainties. And starting off, people going, really, really? And then ending up with students going, I made that. And that sense of student pride, for me, again, has been quite inspiring. And to feel part of that learning curve is very positive. Thanks again to the amazing students, and these are just some students who mocked up themselves going around Roth Park, and I could have shown you another 10 or 12 videos without any problem, but it just makes me smile. So thank you very much. Questions? Yep, please.